Shabbat Shalom, everybody. It's Rabbi Stephen. It's Rob Shmuel Ben Yehoshua. Yes, Rashbi in the house. And it's thank you all for watching. And thank you to those who came out Friday night. We had, as usual, a wonderful service, if I do say so myself. And thank you all the folks that participated. So, this week's portion was Shemot, Exodus. We start a new book. And looking at the flow of the Torah, okay, we've had the book of Genesis, Bereshit, in the beginning. And the beginning was not just, God creating, taking the 6 days of creation and putting, creating the whole universe, the whole world as we know it, all the things that are here. But it was, in a sense, a creation of Judaism. It was a creation of bringing God's Torah, manifesting God's Torah on earth with all the people here. The things that are going to happen more as we get into Exodus when Moses receives the Ten Commandments. And we've had Adam and Eve, our first humans, or our first Homo sapiens sapiens, however you want to mesh that with anthropology. We've had Noah, and we had the Noahide laws, the 7 Noahide laws, which was kind of a precursor to what's about to come, the Ten Commandments and the other 603 that we'll get. We've had Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, our patriarchs, that developed, that started this movement of monotheism, the one God. Each one of the patriarchs in turn created a different prayer service. Abraham's credited with Shachrit, the morning, Isaac, Mincha, the afternoon, and Yaakov, who became Israel, with the Ma'ariv, or the evening service. And then we had Joseph, who also had the gift of prophecy. He was also able to interpret dreams per Hashem's prophecy. And he's the person that's responsible for saving the Israelite family, Jacob's family, from the famine. They got settled in Goshen, and now here we are in Exodus. So whereas Genesis had the individuals develop, excuse me, now we have the Israelites developing as a nation, because as Exodus opens up, and Exodus, the Hebrew word is Shemot, which is one of the first words of that particular portion, and the first few words of this book, Eli, Elah, Shemot. These are the names of the people that came, and it names Israel. Says that the wives, Rachel and Leah, wouldn't make it. They weren't alive when that happened. But it names the sons, names Joseph, Ephraim, and Manasseh. And now what happens is that after all those people have passed, a new Pharaoh came who did not know Joseph. That's what the Torah says. So there's a couple of different allusions here. First of all, there was historically and anthropologically, what they say is that the family of pharaohs, or the dynasty, if you will, of the pharaohs, the kings that were ruling Egypt. And by the word pharaoh comes from the Egyptian word paro, which means house of. It's kind of like referring to the president of the United States, or the POTUS as they call it, as they abbreviate it now, as the White House. It's kind of a similar connotation, similar allusion. So the Hyksos were invaders that came and took over Egypt and came in charge. And then in the intervening years, Pharaoh came that did not know Joseph. That dynasty was overthrown, kicked out, and now there is a new native Egyptian dynasty. And excuse me, being that they saw how Joseph came and he was close to Pharaoh. And as what typically happens with new governments, the Egyptians were very xenophobic. And Pharaoh was looking, I guess, to really consolidate his power, so he needed a scapegoat, and here we go, starting it now. The Jews, they're in every aspect of our society. They're going to take over. If invaders come in, they're going to join with the invaders and take us out, not realizing that the Israelites lived in Egypt too, right? It just doesn't make sense. But prejudice, bigotry, it's not founded in logic. See? So what they did is he enslaved the Israelites to build the various cities. And by the way, we're going to get to another aspect of this particular portion that I'd like to talk about, but in the meantime, there is another commentary that says at first the Israelites were building cities. They were forced labor, cheap labor. They were free. They was slave labor. And then as Moses came in and started and the Israelites wouldn't die from the hard labor, tried to work them to death, and Moses came and said, let my people go. The work became meaningless. work just for the sake of work, because slave labor or not, when you build something, you feel good about what you constructed, right? Well, the Pharaoh, the dynasty, did not want the Israelites to feel any pride in what they were doing, so it was just meaningless work. It was like make work, dig a ditch, then fill it back up. Later on, it says that when Moses came back, and I know I'm skipping a little bit, and said, let my people go, Pharaoh got really angry, and he said, okay, you know what? You just made life harder for the Israelites. And it's not that they didn't have the straw to make bricks, because you really can't make bricks without the straw. But the clarification is that the Israelites would not be supplied with the straw. In other words, not only do they have this backbreaking work, but now there's an extra burden. They got to go find their own straw, because apparently the straw gets into the brick and there's a chemical reaction. And the straw, as it decays, releases certain chemicals that kind of coalesces the brick. Okay, so we see what happened is that Pharaoh also sees that the Israelites are, there's too many of them, and he doesn't, and his magicians and his wise men said, hey, there's going to be one of the Israelites is going to rise and overthrow you. So he ordered the killing of the firstborn. We all pretty much know the story, and Moses' parents put him in a wicker basket, sent him down the Nile. He was seen by Pharaoh's daughter, who may have been a teenage girl, 19, 20 something, and she sees this basket. She sees it's a Hebrew, and it's like the lost puppy syndrome. Can I adopt it? And Miriam was standing by, and she offered to suckle, to wean the infant. The infant was then adopted by Pharaoh's daughter, grew up in the court. Moses, and then he sees the two Israelites fighting, or he sees an Egyptian taskmaster beating an Israelite, and his conscience got welled up, and he started beating the Egyptian taskmaster, accidentally killed him. He was hitting him so hard, and two Hebrew slaves saw him and said, oh, we're going to tell. And Moses, of course, is now on the run, for fear of being accused of murder. So Moses goes to Midian, which was in a part of Ethiopia, and he gets in with Jethro. He rescues his 7 daughters who's at this well, who are trying to draw water, and these other tribesmen come, and they start harassing the girls, and Moses defends them, brings them home to their father Jethro. And some people think that the word Yitro was really a title more than a name, and the man's name is really Ruel. So different things. So Moses then takes Zipporah as his wife, and that's what they did in those days. It's like, everybody remember the movie Green Acres, You Are My Wife, and he grabs her into the scene. And that's kind of what marriage was like. They just took her, and it was a good taking, not a bad taking. It wasn't like it was against her will, but Moses and Zipporah had a son, Gershom, and he named him Gershon. He meant Gershom, a stranger there, because he was sort of a stranger in a strange land. So Moses now is out shepherding the animals, and he goes he goes to after a calf that had lost its way. And of course Hashem is impressed. He sees that this man has this compassion for the lowest animals. And up on Mount Horeb, he sees the burning bush. Now, the allusion is to the burning bush. The bush really didn't burn. Was it really burning, or was it just this bright light? We don't know, because the people that wrote the Torah, that are describing it or that are conveying it, didn't really have the scientific knowledge that we have today to be able to really describe what it may have been. So first it's an angel, a malach, that calls Moses over, and then it's God speaks to him and said, I've heard the groaning of the Israelites, and I will come and rescue them. Now, in the time we have left, a couple of minutes, let's talk about how God identifies himself. Moses says, how will I know you? And God says, Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh, I will be who that I will be. Now, they make the contrast that the patriarchs didn't really know God by the name of Hashem, of Yud-Heh Vav-Heh. They didn't need to. That's part of the commentary. Some people say that God is now revealing himself as the God because of what's about to come. But we know that God's been referred to by various names. Elohim, okay, which means God with a capital G. It could also mean gods with a small g. In Genesis, it talks about the sons of God, B'nai Elohim married Batot, the daughters of men, Batot Ashim, the daughters of men. And people say, oh, okay, there was intermarriage between gods and humans. Well, the conservative Jewish commentary is more to the point of Elohim can also mean nobles. And in Kabbalah, Elohim is the plural of Elah, they. So, there is, so there was, and it's a plural because God is so great. Not that there's many gods, just that God is so great. We have the word El, which comes from the Babylonian word for God, as a God. We have the word El Shaddai, which is what Jacob referred to God in the last portion, as God has given me enough. He's given me all I need. But now God says, here is my name, Yud He Vav He, and that comes from the three words of the word to be. Yiyeh, he was, Hoveh, which we don't use anymore, is, and Yiyeh, he will be. Was, is, and will be. God is eternal. We take those letters, we put it together, Yud He Vav He, and that's how we get the ineffable name of God. We don't know God. We don't know what God is. God was, is, and always will be. He's beyond our comprehension, and that's what the Yud He Vav He means. We don't know how to pronounce that word anymore, and we don't pronounce it because we respect the name. And that's why, by the way, a lot of people didn't want to use Hebrew as a spoken language in Israel. They felt it was a holy language. But of course, we decided we're going to use it and kind of integrate Hebrew into our lives. So thank you for watching. That's my time. We will have another service in about 3 weeks. We're going to be going out the next couple of weeks. In about 3 weeks, it'll Friday or Saturday, probably more like a Friday. That's what people want. So again, thank you for listening. Shabbat Shalom a little early, and hope to see you at services